Thanks for stopping by, my anime and manga nerds. Welcome back to Calvary's Cave, and it's time to take another cave dive into the Fate series. More specifically, we are looking at Season 2 of Fate Zero. And if you haven't seen my previous video regarding Season 1 of Fate Zero, feel free to click the link and check it out. And a real quick warning for all of you out there, we will be covering spoilers in this video. And I definitely do have a lot to cover in this video, so without further ado, let's just get into it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. First off, one thing that stood out to me is that there's not really a clean break between Season 1 and Season 2. It's actually pretty easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Season 1 ends right in the middle of the chaos after Castor has unleashed his madness on Fuyuki. Then Season 2 just picks up immediately as a direct continuation of the fight to take him down. There's no real pause or breathing room. I honestly think the season could have landed better if it had ended on Castor's twisted epiphany about God. You know, that chilling moment where he decides to do something heinous with Fuyuki. To me, that would have given the finale a stronger sense of closure and made the transition into Season 2 feel much more intentional instead of creeping in mid-fight. As a viewer, it almost feels like you blink and suddenly you're already deep into the next episode without realizing that the seasons have changed. Once you get into Season 2, the pace completely shifts. Nothing crazy happens in the first season. It's mostly like smart build-up or world building and setting all the pieces on the board. But get ready, everyone, because Season 2 wastes no time. Everything starts reaching its conclusion and the story knows that it's time to start closing out those plot points, and it doesn't shy away from getting the job done. Major threads get resolved, big decisions are made, and the tension that was carefully built up in Season 1 finally pays off in a big way. And if the fights were already one of the biggest highlights for you in Season 1, then Season 2 is gonna blow them out of the water. They genuinely pale in comparison to what comes next. You get these massive, epic aerial battles that look incredible on screen, the intense and satisfying sequence where they finally take care of Castor, the long-awaited rematch between Saber and Lancer that feels even more personal this time around, and that wild chase scene with Saber and Ryder that appears to come out of nowhere. It's so good! The scale jumps way up, the choreography gets even tighter, and the pure intensity of every clash hits harder. Ufotable really goes all out here, and you can feel how much freedom they had to let the animation breathe and shine. It turns what was already strong action in Season 1 into something that truly feels next level. And the plot twists in Season 2, they are significantly better than they were in Season 1. They're sharper, more emotional, and way more shocking this time around. The long, tense conversations between Gilgamesh and Kide finally build up to this awesome twist where the two of them decide to team up and take out Tosaka. And for me, that one hits especially hard. Right after we get that heartfelt episode showing Rin's big adventure in Season 1 and how Tokiomi is actually a caring and decent father underneath it all, he gets taken from us in the most disrespectful and brutal way possible. It's devastating, and it plants the seeds for what I believe to be one of the biggest ongoing problems that we're going to be seeing later in the Fate series. And then there's that completely unexpected break-in where Ryder suddenly busts the door down, kills Maya, kidnaps Irisveal, and takes off with Saber in a hot pursuit. You're left thinking that it's pure chaos, until you find out that it was actually a calculated one-off team-up between Karia and Kide, all part of their bigger setup for the finale. It's so good! The way everything clicks together and the layers of betrayal keep stacking up and makes the second half feel incredibly satisfying. But with that being said, I do actually have some legitimate gripes about Season 2. There are several moments where the characters fall into that classic cliche of speaking in the most cryptic and vague way possible, which keeps everyone at each other's throats instead of just saying one sentence that would fix everything. For example, Tosaka has no idea about the horrors that Sakura is enduring under Zokenmato, and when Karia finally gets the chance to confront him, he never actually tells Tosaka what's really happening to his daughter. He wanted both Rin and Sakura to grow up as world-class mages, but the way that both men talk to each other just leaves enough ambiguity for them to keep fighting each other. During Lancer's death, Saber stays completely quiet while Lancer dies, believing that she was part of the plan to disgrace his honor. He leaves the show full of hatred towards everyone when a single sentence explaining that Saber had no knowledge of Kiritsugu's actions would have changed everything for the two of them. Even Aoi and Karia's pseudo love story feels a bit forced at the end. Karia gets blamed for Tosaka's death, and instead of explaining what actually happened, he just takes it upon himself to choke her out because drama, I guess. And don't get me started on Ryder and Saber. They're at each other's throats in this 1 episode long chase sequence. Ryder never once makes it clear that he had nothing to do with Irisville's kidnapping, so they just keep duking it out. Would it really have killed somebody to just say one straightforward sentence that would clear up every misunderstanding? But even with those gripes that I have about season 2, one part that actually did stick out to me was Kiritsugu's backstory. It doesn't just give him more screen time, it completely reframes how you see the man and finally lets you understand exactly why he is the way that he is. Watching his past unfold, you see the trauma, the losses, and the impossible choices that shaped him into this cold, ruthless mage killer. Suddenly, his detached personality and willingness to sacrifice anything and anyone makes complete sense. After that arc, I stopped viewing him as just the edgy anti-hero and started seeing him as someone who was broken by the world and decided that the only way forward was to fix it completely. And when you really sit with his ideal, I genuinely believe that he has the most ambitious dream in the entire show. Kiritsugu doesn't want a personal wish or a kingdom saved like the others. He wants to use the Grail to reshape the entire modern world into a perfect paradise where no one ever has to die again. No more needless deaths, no more pointless suffering, no more children losing their parents to war or illness. He's aiming for a complete eradication of mortality itself. And that kind of goal is on a completely different scale from wanting to conquer the world, restore a kingdom, or even find personal meaning. And what makes it hit even harder is knowing the heavy price he's already paid and continues to pay to chase that dream. It turns him from a mysterious operator in the shadows into one of the most tragic and understandable characters in the whole war. His ideal might be the grandest, but it also feels like the most heartbreaking because you can already sense how impossible and how destructive it might become. And to make everything worse, we get the brutal conclusion to his backstory. We see his resolve pushed to the absolute limit when he makes the heartbreaking decision to kill his own mentor, Natalia, in order to stop the dead apostle virus from spreading. The whole situation is wild. The virus has taken over the plane through killer bees? Anyways, he chooses to sacrifice the one person who basically raised him, all in the name of saving an undisclosed number of people who might become victims later. Now that I'm thinking about it though, didn't he have like other options than blowing up the plane? I think he went a tad overboard with this one. I couldn't help but think to myself like, wait a second, what was stopping Natalia from just punching out a window after the plane landed so the bees never see the light of day? Couldn't they have just blown up the plane while it was still on the runway after it landed? There were probably a dozen simpler ways to handle the threat without turning it into such a tragic and personal sacrifice. But then I remind myself like, never mind, that's too much thinking. That's just how these stories work sometimes. Still, that moment really drives home how far Kiritsugu is willing to go and how unshakable his resolve has become. It's equal parts tragic and a little ridiculous when you start picking it apart, but it definitely makes his character feel raw and human. And I'm gonna give credit where credit is due. All of the character deaths in season 2 hit super hard. They don't feel cheap or thrown in for shock value. Each one carries real weight, emotion, and tragedy that sticks with you long after the episode ends. Ryunosuke goes out with a twisted smile on his face after getting sniped in the stomach by Kiritsugu. He stares at his own flowing blood in pure delight, finally realizing that the beautiful red that he'd been searching for his entire life was inside of him all along. And then the headshot comes and we get the end of Ryunosuke. Caster's end is fairly satisfying. After his massive sea monster gets destroyed, he has one last delusional vision of Jeanne d'Arc before Saber cuts him down. He fades away, still lost in his madness, calling out to his holy maiden, good riddance. Get him out of here. Kire's father gets abruptly killed in a cold power grab when Kaineth takes his command seals back. Kaineth and his wife Salao meet a brutal and disrespectful end. Maya from the distance guns them both down in cold blood while they're helpless. It's quick, merciless, and shows just how far Kiritsugu's team will go. Now I could see it coming from a mile away, but it still didn't really take away from the impact of the scene. And Lancer's death is one of the most heartbreaking for me. He is forced by a command seal to impale himself on his own lance, and he dies cursing everyone around him for trampling a knight's honor. He leaves the world full of rage and disappointment, believing Saber was in on the betrayal. You got Kiritsugu's childhood crush, Shirley. She had been driven by a desire to help Kiritsugu with his magical aspirations, and Shirley began experimenting with magecraft using his dad's materials without proper training. And this led to her accidentally turning herself into a dead apostle. Kiritsugu's dad was killed by Kiritsugu himself to prevent a larger disaster, marking the moment that the boy turns into the emotionless mage killer that we know today. Natalia, his mentor and the woman who basically raised him, dies when Kiritsugu is forced to shoot down her infested plane to stop the dead apostle virus from spreading. She goes out knowing that her own student chose the greater good over her life. Tosaka gets backstabbed, quite literally, by his trusted apprentice, Kide, with the very Azoth knife he just gifted to him as a token of their friendship. It's so disrespectful and sudden after we just saw how caring of a father that he was in Rin's big adventure in season 1. Maya dies in Kiritsugu's arms after being mortally wounded during the chaos from Berserker, one of the few people who truly understood Kiritsugu's methods. Irisveel's death is especially cruel. Kide strangles her and snaps her neck while interrogating her. All the while, she's trying to protect her ideals. Her consciousness gets consumed by the corrupted Grail, making it feel like she died twice. But my boy Iskander goes out like a true king of conquerors. After his army gets wiped out by Gilgamesh, he charges forward one last time on his horse, only to be bound by chains and pierced by the ultimate sword. And even in defeat, he dies smiling. Rest in peace to my favorite character, Alexander the Great. Karia's end is quiet and tragic. After everything he sacrificed to save Sakura, he returns to her one last time, exhausted and broken, before finally passing away without ever achieving his goal. And then there's the quiet and almost understated end to Kiritsugu himself years later, a shell of the man that he once was, having lost everything in pursuit of his impossible dream. Every single one of these hit different, and that's what makes the show feel so heavy by the finale. Unfortunately, one thing that really didn't sit right with me is how they turned Karia's character into an idiot by the end of season 2. He started with so much potential, he was physically weak, and he pushed himself to the absolute limit with those worms eating him alive, and yet he still had one of the strongest servants in the entire war. But his instability and emotional breakdowns caused him to blow every advantage that he had. The misunderstandings piled up, leading him to choke out the girl that he loved in this tragic scene, and in the end, he died with almost no respect from Sakura. She barely even acknowledged what he sacrificed for her. It's genuinely unfortunate because out of everyone in the Holy Grail War, Karia's desire was easily the most selfless. He wasn't fighting for glory, revenge, or some grand ideal like the others were. He just wanted to save Sakura from the Mato family's cruelty, and that pure motivation made him one of the most relatable characters, and watching him fail so completely and die without any real payoff feels like a missed opportunity for me. Another thing that I really loved about the ending of this show was the Holy Grail not being at all what everyone thought it was. Throughout the entire war, all of the masters and servants are fighting both tooth and nail for this legendary artifact that's supposed to grant any wish and bring true happiness. But in the final moments, we discover that the Grail has been corrupted for a very long time, and instead of being a pure vessel of miracles, it's become something twisted and evil, a mud-filled abomination that doesn't even grant wishes in the way that people hoped it would. It actually feeds on conflict, death, and despair, and it twists whatever wish is made into something monstrous. And this revelation completely reframes everything that happened in the war. All of the sacrifices, the betrayals, the heroic ideals, and even Kiritsugu's grand dream of a deathless paradise suddenly feels pointless and tragic in hindsight. The Grail wasn't a savior, it was a curse wearing a beautiful mask. And that final twist hits hard and leaves you sitting there questioning every motivation that drove the characters forward. And what makes that Grail twist hit even harder, you may ask? That's a great question. It's how It directly destroys Kiritsugu's entire reason for fighting. He spent his whole life chasing the impossible dream of using the Grail to create a perfect world with no death or suffering. That was his everything. The one ideal big enough to justify all of the terrible things that he did, including killing his own mentor and pushing away the people that he loved. But in the end, the Grail he sacrificed so much for turns out to be completely corrupted. Instead of granting his wish for paradise, it only spits out more mud, more despair, and more destruction. Kiritsugu watches his dream literally crumble in front of him. He gets exactly what he wished for in the most horrifying way possible, and it completely breaks him. Years later, we see the quiet, devastating aftermath. The once cold and calculated mage killer reduced to a hollow shell of a man, dying slowly with nothing left. His grand ideal, the biggest one in the entire show, ends up being the very thing that destroys him. That final twist doesn't just ruin the Grail, it ruins Kiritsugu. And that's what makes the ending feel so tragically perfect. Now, one final gripe that I have is the ending itself. It doesn't really feel like a true ending. It feels more like a Disney-style consume product and get excited for more product setup. We get the disheartening conclusion where Kide and Gilgamesh basically walk away as the pseudo winners, and then the show suddenly shifts gears to introduce the next protagonist, Shiro, by shoehorning him into the rubble. And on top of that, Waver leaves to start traveling the world. Sakura appears to have completely fallen under Zoken's control, which I'm sure is going to become a massive problem later. And Kide becomes Rin's guardian. It's a whole lot of setup packed into the final moments. Now, I get that this is a prequel, so it has to bridge into the rest of the Fate series, but I still feel like it could have been presented better. The sharp tone shift from the heavy tragedy to here's your next main character, there had to have been a smoother, less forced way to introduce Shiro instead of just dropping him into the destruction like that. Now, before I wrap this up, I do have to mention one small thing. After everything that happens, Kide gifts Rin the very same Azoth dagger that he used to kill her father. Like, bro, that is cold. It's such a sickening move, and given my slightly twisted sense of humor, it was kind of comedic. Like, Kide is straight up a villain, and the show does an excellent job of making you hate him by the end of it. Still, I'm genuinely excited to see what other messed up ideas he comes up with next. Gilgamesh pretty much called it out during that one scene with Katia and Aoi when he told Kide that his script was a tad trite. So, is that his whole thing? Sitting in the shadows, writing his own little 6 scripts, and then pulling the strings for his own entertainment? Either way, I'm really excited for what other chaos that he cooks up in the future. Overall, it's actually kind of disheartening for me to admit this, but I liked season 2 way better than I liked season 1. The fights hit harder, the twists land better, the characters felt deeper, and the story finally delivered on all the buildup. But at the same time, I actually ended up having more problems with season 2, especially with all of the heavy-handed misunderstandings, the way that some characters like Katia got reduced to making these dumb decisions, and that setup heavy ending that felt more like a trailer for the next story than an actual conclusion. And because of those narrative issues that I didn't have for season 1, I do have to be honest with my rating. Now, I know that I gave season 1 a solid 9 out of 10. This time around, I'm giving season 2 of Fate Zero a respectable 8 out of 10. But yeah, I think that's everything that I got for this video. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. You still here?